Hello, it's Coach Aaron Saft, the Running is Life podcast. I really have a great guest today. Um, all of them are great, but Jason Green definitely is a kindred spirit. As a runner, as a person, as an RD, we share a lot of the same views, opinions, which is great to have a conversation with him and kind of work through some of this stuff just in our sport in general. As we ourselves run races, as Jason continues to RD, and my experience with RDing, technology in our sport, everything. We had a great conversation. I hope you enjoy this one, and please let us know what you think. And so we're gonna get through this conversation here with Jason, and afterwards I'll catch up with you guys. A lot has transpired since the last episode, so look forward to that. But until then, enjoy this conversation with Jason Green. Jason, good morning.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
No,
I was thinking about all the time that we've known each other over a decade or so, and
right?
I feel like the last time I saw you, like I was coming up this Forest Service Road, and you were like flying down the hill toward the finish at uh, Quest for the Crest
Ah,
50K, like to win that, man.
yeah.
I was thinking about the last time I saw you at a race. You were
I
just
know.
killing it.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you. And actually, even before we met, this is actually how I learned about Jason Green. Is I put on a race here called Yeti or Not, and somebody had said, well, you know. Jason, he puts on the Yeti races, and you may have kind of a naming thing here with him. And I said, "Who is Jason Green?" I didn't know who you were at the time, so I looked it up and saw you had all these Yeti races, and I mean, we never had any beef about that. It wasn't something that I was trying to infringe upon you, but that's how I learned about Jason Green. And yeah, seeing I still owe. There's so many people that I owe a race to, and yours are one of them because I want to come experience the Jason Green race. I have not, so
Yeah.
that is
Oh, I
that is on
forgot
me.
about that race. And you know that that race yet you're not is that Solly, right? Like
That was DuPont, right?
oh,
Yeah,
DuPont,
DuPont,
DuPont. Oh,
right? Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Which DuPont has since kind of been really wishy-washy about events, so they so it's all good. But yeah. So anyway, more into you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were just before we started. You were saying that you're this coming you're going to have 11 races, which is just incredible. What
Yes.
really what inspires you to put on so many races?
You know, I love it, right? Like I enjoy seeing people. I enjoy seeing ultra running grow, and I enjoy trying to lead it in the direction that my mentors taught me about
Yeah,
ultra running and like really preserving some of this
yeah.
and I think now more than ever with the ironization of ultra running, you know it's important to keep ultra races in the hands of ultra runners
Mm,
and keep those values that we hold closely and hold them up high and teach the next generation, who
mm,
will go on to put on races and cool stuff and keep our community welcoming to everyone,
yo,
uh,
totally.
no matter what. And, the one thing I always have thought about ultra running is it saves a spot for everyone, no matter what.
Yeah,
It
right.
has a spot for you.
Yeah,
And sometimes things seem to be a little on the side of elitism, right? And these days,
sure,
and
sure.
so that's why I keep pushing forward. The more Iron Man or someone buys races, the more I'll double down on them, right? Like I want to hold the torch high, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
And I want to give people really that introductory into ultra running where they will do it for a lifetime.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
my
Nice.
that's really and I just it's so fun. Like it is all the personalities, like just to me, like it's a day of fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Hey, I don't ever say this a lot, and I should more often. The athletes I get that you train at the races really come well prepared and give it a good go, right?
oh,
And I
thanks.
notice they keep that old school ultra running in themselves too. Even they're new runners, they take responsibility for themselves, right? They show up trained. They show up, partly trained, but that there's something to be said about that. Like, and I think a lot about that, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
ultra running, kind of this ebb and flow, and sometimes people just don't want to train, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's that. Oh
And,
man, there's so many things in what you just said. Let's start with mentors.
yeah.
Let's talk about some of your mentors. Who are they?
Uh, so one of my big one, my numero uno is David Milner. I'd I tell people I got into ultra running was from an article
Okay.
and in a doctor's office. I hadn't even run like a mile then, right?
Right.
So I went
Right.
home and I said I'm going to run an ultra 50 miles. That was my there was no 50K. I didn't know anything about 50K.
What,
So just
what
50
was the
miles.
article? Just to
Yeah, it
start.
was like just about it probably was Dean Carnassus running 50 miles
Mm.
and eating pizza at like excerpt, like that got a lot of people in the ultra running, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
I can't recall. And so at the time in Atlanta, I lived on a state park and I would just be going out for these like short runs. I couldn't make it very far, but I had this Mississippi 50 miler was the closest 50 miler. You remember this race?
Yes.
And I would just be out there, and I ran into someone named David Milner, and he ran ultras, and he was a super cool guy, and he taught me everything. And he was a great mentor. And one of the great things about him being my mentor is like in the 80s, he was like a stand-up comic, right?
Nice.
So like every run was so fun, right? And like and for a while we ran sometimes he would just run races with me. Like we ran the first H9 together, like
Nice.
11, 12 years ago, right? 50
Yeah.
miler. Like and he was just like a cool like it was cool. Like he made ultra running accessible, very fun, right? And
Yeah.
he most of all taught me like a lot about the code. And like I tell people before I started was at the starting line of my first ultra, I'd volunteered for 6 races, ultra races.
Mhm.
And by the time I got to the starting line of that race, I knew a shitload from volunteering, right?
Yep.
And also I knew a shitload of people, right? It's a small
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
So when I had a lot of confidence because I was with people, I'd helped with people I'd worked at aid stations at my first starting line of my first ultra. And that was such a boost for me, right? Like and I had I just knew I was going to finish, right?
Yeah.
And that was it. And he always told me, it was like, every race you run, you should volunteer for two. This he wrote kind of this thing out. And so I still hold that up pretty high,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in fact, last year I ran this race. I was really well trained. As you get older, it's fucking hard,
It
right?
is.
Like
It
to
is.
get down into those PRs
It
you
is.
had,
It
but
is.
and man, I really crushed it, and really felt good. And I got to the finish line, and like no one cared.
Oh,
Uh, the people, I didn't even know if they got my time. They didn't even look at me, right? And it
yeah.
wasn't like
Yeah. Yeah.
a road half marathon where 20 people. It was just me and no one came for 10 minutes later. And I was
Oh,
just like, wow, that's like I said, is this the state? And
right.
instead of like just putting the race on blast. I thought about I would never do that anyway because you a race means a lot of things to a lot of different people that are running
Absolutely.
it, and you should never put it down just because you had a bad experience, right?
Right.
But I said, how can I change this? So this year I went and volunteered at it, and I like brought all these things at the finish who were like, going crazy. And I hope I made, someone's day. And I
Yeah.
hope someone, because of that, continues to run races and believe in the community. You
Nice.
know,
I like how you changed the scenario, right? Like, so what can I do, right? How can I
yeah.
make this better? So that,
It,
that
and,
yeah,
and that was really because of like, the way, my mentor Dave in ultra running, like he volunteered a lot, right?
that's cool.
And like, I mean, he and his wife would be at home like baking weird stuff for the AIDS. You know what I mean? Like just crazy stuff, and like
Yeah,
it really, to me, ultra running was like, I was like, oh, okay, I get to do this race, but also I can come be with the community, have a lot of fun, help runners, right? And I
yeah,
I, I got the same exact satisfaction out of volunteering and helping people as I did finishing 50 miles.
that's cool.
And to me, that's what a good mentor will, and that's what like I want people to catch that vibe when they run a Yeti race, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. So Dave, um, who else?
Oh,
Your
there was
biggest.
a couple other people, like his wife, Alyssa Milner, also a real big influence on how I ran. What I did was Janice Anderson. You people might know her. She is really competitive ultra runner, right? Like, but she's still competitive with me at races. Just again this year at Mountain Miss, she, you know,
Right
gave me a pat and and
on.
and uh, and toasted me in the last 5 miles. So she really, helped me. I was running ultras, and Dave and I were training a lot, and I was having a hard time. I could not unlock 100 miles, right?
Mm,
So she really came in and really helped me unlock that distance, right?
that's cool.
Because at the time, and you know, in the alcohol industry, we were working a lot of hours, and she found a way to navigate this where I could, train enough, like how, and she really scheduled these runs, where I would go to work all day and then I would run 6 hours at nighttime, right?
Right.
After, and it really, her plan really helped me unlock 100 miles.
That's
Like,
cool.
and, and, um, and finally, when you unlock it, it's unlocked, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
when
yeah,
your
yeah.
brain understands that, you're like,
Right.
okay, I got a pretty good understanding of this, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I feel like, 50 miles, 100K, like pretty easy for your brain and body to figure out, depending, they're pretty good. But
Yeah.
man, sometimes, Jesus,
Yeah.
like the whole world at mile like fucking 70 or 70, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Absolutely.
she was a big, big help in my ultra running, just to move on. So really fantastic to have mentors like that in my little local community.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I mean, you keep bringing up the word community, which you've created such an amazing community in the Yeti Army.
Yeah, thanks.
Uh,
we,
like it's obvious that running and ultra running, race directing, and this community has really given you joy and inspired you. Where did that start?
uh, I would like to think it's since I was a kid. I would put on like these skateboard contests behind
Remember
like
we
the
talked about this?
Chevron. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I would just like invite people. I wouldn't ask the guy at the Chevron. We just show up, skate contests behind his place, right? Like,
nice.
but the skateboard community taught me a lot about community
Mm,
and being how accepting the community of skateboarding is, right? Like,
yeah,
and so when I got into ultra running, like there was some like super like some like when I got into like running, like I ran in high school, all this out of,
Sure.
but when I got into running and I was like, the people I would come in contact with, was like some of the running groups, like they were really like, what can I say? It was just like either you run fast or you're not like I've really,
Disjointed.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I found ultra running, it was like this huge blessing, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
Oh, totally.
it suddenly was so different, right? Like it was like you come across the line and everybody is going crazy, you know what I mean? Like, and I still say, right, at the races, like, say the Yeti 100, you
Sure.
come across like the loneliest place to be is winning it.
Yeah.
Like it's just me and
Yeah.
them in the dark.
Right. Right.
there's
Yep.
there's this piece of wood. Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
But it's so awesome to see the joy that comes together, like as people go home, shower, come back, and it just builds and builds and builds, right?
Right. Right.
And I love that so much that and it's a good way. If you win the race, you get to come back, be around everyone too. They get to see everyone. Like it's just,
Yep.
I love that, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. I think, from an outside observer's perspective, you make it, as you stated earlier, so accessible to all and so welcoming to all.
yeah,
And that's what I see. And that's, if anyone looking to do something similar to what you're doing and creating a community, they need to emulate, because that's the biggest thing. Even in my coaching collective that I have, it's, yeah, I'm welcoming to all. Like, I don't coach a lot of elites. I just coach everyone.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
And that's part of it. And just being embracing of every single person, because you give, probably the greatest hugs in the sport, right? That's part of what you're known
yeah,
for at the
yeah.
finish line. And I think that's, what people look forward to. A lot of my athletes, they talk about it. I just want that Jason hug at the end, which
well,
is cool.
it's like like to me, like it's an amazing hug both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you spend so much time and effort preparing and putting together this race and bringing people, and you're like, as a race director, like hoping everyone's safe,
Oh,
you're hoping everything's going well, like
yeah.
you like really in my mind, I'm hoping everyone hits the finish line, right? Like
Yeah.
I really do. And when people come across the finish line and they have that like just release,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Yes.
of I mean, it charges me so much up. And people like I just love it. Like sometimes when I'm running a race myself, I think about that. And I think
Yeah.
about like that release at the finish and that joy. And some people's finish, I follow them usually, a lot of participants and entrants on the way to before the race. And some they have incredible lives and I enjoy following them. And the the things that these individuals overcome just to get to the race and to finish. Like it, I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
huge joy in my life.
Oh, yeah.
It's like at the end of every race, it's like it's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me.
That's cool. Like John LaCroix, Sherpa,
Yeah.
Sherpa John. He has this one race, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of which one it is, but he records everybody at the finish. Like he has, his
Yeah.
recording equipment, so they can talk about their experience, which I have often thought would be a great, like if you just had like a separate area and just had your little recording stuff and let them,
Yeah.
because the conversations they have with us, or even if they were okay with us recording those conversations when they come across the finish line, to talk about what they went through, not
Yeah.
only in the race, but in training to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Some of those stories are the most amazing stories and like just inspiring, because
I,
it's wonderful. I wish
that's
you
a
could just,
really cool idea, right? Like,
yeah, right.
you know,
That's
you
I
know,
like, I think it would be, like I said, especially like you said, at
look,
the 100-mile finish, right? Like,
yeah.
oh
But
man.
because right when you run 100 miles, at the end of it, you are stripped down.
Hmm.
You've thought about everything, right?
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah. You've been through the
You,
range of
yeah,
emotions.
yeah. Just last year, I ran 100 miler, and I was like, holy shit! I'm thinking about like John McGuire waited on me in fifth grade to fight me. You know what I mean? Like it was so weird. it truly unlocks memories that um that's why I like ultra running. It really, a lot of that, it unlocks those memories. So I would like to know what the hell I would say at the end of 100 miles, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. I can, a few times this summer after the Grand Slam, I can, just remember just the raw emotion, of the
yes.
finish, like just you're so overwhelmed by everything and the experience and how tired you are. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. When you look at your your 100-mile experiences. And I oftentimes like to ask guests this, but when you get into those moments where you're having a hard time, it's, you're tired and you're like looking for something to inspire you to keep moving forward, where does your mind and heart go?
A lot of it comes from like a lot nowadays, it comes from like just, I remind myself that I get out to be out here for 25 plus hours, right? Like that, I find that a big privilege and I'm
Yeah,
able to move for that long, right?
right.
And also, like, believe it or not, like it's just a lot of, I just enjoy the shit out of it, right? Like, it's rare that I'm like, I get like the blues, but I enjoy that moment where you are just at the end of the rope, right? And somehow you keep going. I don't really like need to search deep because I just, that's the moment where like,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Everything else in my mind is gone. Like, and I'm just in this, I'm in this perfect moment of time, right?
Yeah,
And I love to always find out what I'm capable of, right?
totally.
And
Yep.
and sometimes ultra running will take me there to this very raw place, and you're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah,
I enjoy that. Like I just like, that moment where you're like, I can't take another step, but then
right.
suddenly you're 5 miles down the trail, like you just like these moments you overcome, right? You
Yeah,
learn a lot about your own self, right? Like
totally.
what you're capable of in your normal life, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And when you look at signing up for 100, what goes into that decision? What interests you in a race? What are things that excite you? Like mine are mountains.
Yeah.
You put mountains in it, sign me up.
No, yeah. I think that's I don't know what I look for. Like last year, I really always try to old run like an old, like one that's been around 10, 20 plus years, ultra,
Which one
25
was last year?
across the years. I just
Okay.
signed up for the 100.
Okay.
And that if I signed up for like 24 or 48, I would just stop.
Yeah.
Like when there's
Yeah.
no goal to it. So I
Sure.
like needed a way to DNF. But and I went there and people are like, "Oh, you're crazy. You can't run a mile loop." And right, to me, I was like, "This is going to be very difficult to run a
Yeah.
mile loop
Oh, yeah.
100 times, right?"
Totally. Yeah. For me too.
And I found it to be amazing. It was, first off, this really long span of the people I've known in ultra running, you know, the people that were amazing in 1988 to the people that were amazing in 2021, right? Like, and just being around all those individuals and all that ultra knowledge and sharing like some conversations, it made it go by, you know. However, I will say I fell victim to my watch. Like this is like the 100 mile thing. Like I was stripped so far down, like just because we had like some storms and it was just all the things that always get thrown at you in 100 miles, right? Like,
Right.
and I know better than to rely on my watch for like mileage, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
you got the best timer in the planet, Mike in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and I was getting like, when you just like, oh, I want to be done, and I'm at like mile, 91, and I come through and they're like, you're at mile 88, right? And like, I knew I was like, my brain was so fried. that I was like, Mike, you got to check the back. Like I was like, something is wrong. Something is wrong. And that's how. And I tell people at my race, I'm like even the Yeti 100 is certified course, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And people still come up with 98 miles,
Sure.
103 miles, right? Like
Right.
it's watches.
Yes.
But I always
Of
say, hey,
course.
don't do that. And then
Yeah.
shit happened to me, right? So I get a taste of my own medicine. And then
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I have like a really good understanding of what happens in your brain, right?
Yeah.
Like you're
Totally.
like,
Yeah.
no way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it was right. He was right. And I just said, and then I was like, I know better than to rely on this watch,
Right. Yeah.
for
Totally.
something other than an approximation of miles at that point and just kind of keep pace, right? I use
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of for pace.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a recent episode in Trail Runner Nation. Are you a podcast listener?
Not ultra running, believe it or not, or trail running, believe it or not.
That's fair enough. Yeah, and it's not for everybody, that's for sure. But they had a really good episode about patience, and it's what what the point was that if we're staying present, then we're being patient. Whereas like if we're thinking into the future, obviously we're not staying in motion or staying in the moment, and we're not staying patient. But the hardest part is when you're in the moment and don't want to be in the moment, right? Like you want to be that far ahead.
Yeah.
So that's and that's what we need to learn is to be patient, right? Everybody always says
Yes.
be present, stay in the moment. What that really comes down to is being patient, right? So like
Yeah. Yeah.
working on our patience, which is the toughest thing as a human being, to, to work on our patience, because we are obviously a society of instant gratification.
Yes.
um
Oh, and more now than ever, right? Me
Absolutely.
too.
Yes,
Me too. I'm
yes.
like, this
Oh yeah.
video lasted more than 20 seconds.
I know, right? Like, oh man, this article is like 2 pages. Oh my gosh, like how am I gonna get through this?
Yes. I really agree with that. Is a really good statement there on patience. I agree. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Our sport is, it is a lesson in patience. That's
yes.
and that's what it comes down to is how patient are you? How your ability to stay patient and think through the moment. What will you do now, right, to help you later? Like a lot of times we ask ourselves, like, why am I doing this right now? And we're asking ourselves the wrong question, right? It's what should I be doing right now so that
Yeah.
I can move on and get
Yeah.
to that later point. But we oftentimes don't ask ourselves the right
No.
question.
No.
uh, um, so what there, two-part question here.
Yeah.
What's your favorite race as an RD that you put on, and what's your favorite race that you have run? And it can be
Yeah.
multiple, but
It's yeah, it's tough for me for the races I put on. Like, I like this weekend was the Yeti snake bite. It's like 11th year. And I
mm,
think about all the first timers that come through there and I really like it. But then I like Damn Yeti is point to point, goes to a brewery, and it's just like really good time.
yeah,
It's a really hard for me to put because each one has their own personality, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, totally.
and you never know when you're putting on a race like what will stick. Our new one up in Virginia, my hometown, Troublesome Hollow, like that one turned out to be this really fun one, and I had a lot of deep connections for people who came, and it's probably like my whole family. We're generations from up there in Virginia, right?
Right.
And they all came out and worked aid stations, and they had like this great time, right? So that one like really shot to the top because my entire family, my aunts,
Yeah,
from
yeah,
typical Appalachian family, my mom's part of like 9 kids, you know what I mean? And like
yeah, yeah,
so I really enjoyed them like coming out and welcoming them to where we've called home for generations and being very open arms about it in Appalachia. And it really stuck with me a little bit last year. So,
nice.
but
That's cool.
but one of my favorite races, like I said, I always try to run one that's been around a long time. I think you get every year I try to run a race, 20 years old,
Mm-hmm.
that's been around. I think you get a look back at our history of ultra running for a
Totally.
race that's been around that long, because it really don't change off of its thing. And I think it's really cool and really awesome
Mm.
and fun, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and I do like Mountain Mist a whole damn bunch. Like,
yeah.
oh, I got my 10-year jacket, so that's how
Oh
much
wow,
I like
nice.
it. Yeah. So I do like that race, and I think it's because it's like a January race, and I'm not too trained in January, right? And it's
Yeah,
like everybody else is in the same boat as me. We've come off like a year,
yeah,
everybody's run that fall to winter 100 or big race,
right.
and you kind of take some time off, and we all come into that January like uh just not not very trained, and we all like just hurt through a 50K out there.
Yeah,
It's fun, right? The way we
yeah.
started the year with everybody. So that's one of my favorite
That's
races.
cool.
Um,
Have you done
you
Old
know,
Dominion?
I have not. That I have to tell you, like, I need to, because everyone's like, you know, old school, old school. You
Old
know what I
school.
mean?
Old
Yeah.
school.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. When you said that, that's the first race that like
well,
popped into my head, super old race and
yeah.
super old school. Like, is like, when I was out there and I'm kind of stuck having a panic attack and just kind of trying to work my way to the aid station, realizing there ain't nobody coming to save me. And
No,
like
no,
getting to the aid station, they don't have any way to communicate that I'm having a panic attack. I was
no.
like, this race may be a little too old school.
Yeah. We
For
we
today.
might I've seen some photos of the aid stations, and I love it. Like, they
Yeah,
might have some cookies out there.
right,
Might.
maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's definitely, like
and
they have just kept it the way it's always been, which is cool, and
oh, well, 100%. It's like when I look at the people who just in the early days of Western states,
mm,
they'll just have like some weird hydration thing and like
yeah,
just
yeah.
cotton sock, like,
Syrup bottles taped to
yeah,
their hands.
like literal gym socks on, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Road
totally.
shoes, like
Yeah.
real
Gym
like
shorts.
gym, and they would just do it.
Yep. Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, and I often look at those photos and I'm like, shit, did we make it too complicated? Right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know. Yeah. Like we've got like grills set up now at aid stations and
oh,
yeah.
t- same, like, right? I got people rolling avocado wraps now,
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
I mean, I look at those old photos, and I have got to run with Gordy a few times in my and over the years,
Sure.
and his stories about he used to hide cans of beans out there and just open up cans of beans and eat them. And,
Oh God.
and we were running this race like 2 years ago together, and I ran up on him. And if you're in this and you ever see Gordy, just chill and be with him for a while. Like, and he will delve into the history, and it's pretty interesting. And we were running, and I didn't notice anything. I looked, and this man just was carrying a loaf of bread to eat. I have a photo of him, me and him, and he just has a loaf of bread.
That's
Not,
awesome.
no gels, just a loaf of bread.
Just a loaf of bread. That is old school.
And the guy still makes it, right? I mean, he
Yeah.
makes it to the not Western anymore, but this race
Sure.
he made it, and I was like, man, like, white bread and beans, that sound pretty damn good. Like, can I do that? Like, here I am
Oh.
getting mad that the pocket's not big enough for more than two gels. I'm not sure. That's what I mean. When you run like an old race and people come that have a lot of history,
Yes.
like across the years, that it
Yeah.
truly is a remarkable place to get in touch with people that's been running ultras for a long time,
Yeah. Totally.
and
Yeah. I think when I was RDing, especially for Hellbender, I became a lot more observant of things that were going on in races and kind of taking mental notes of, oh, that's a really good idea. Do you find yourself doing that as well?
100%.
Yeah.
And also the other way, things that don't
Mm.
work. Don't
Yeah.
ever do.
Yeah.
I have like a list of don't ever do this,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of it is from myself, I might
Mm.
add. So I here's one story: is I wanted to have the first race that had an aid station in the middle of a river. And I got so stuck on this idea, right? And so I recruited my mentor, David and Alyssa,
Uh-huh.
and made them dress up as Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. And I put this aid station in the middle of a river as a big river crossing. And I made them play
Oh my God.
Islands in the Stream by Kenny Rogers. But in my blindness, I forgot about how they would get more water. It was an inaccessible aid station, so whatever they brought in was it. And guess what? The humidity was high in
Oh
Georgia, of
man.
course. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I take note of that now. I see an aid station about like in ways of accessibility, like can we
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was like the moment,
Oh,
right?
totally. Totally. Yeah.
Luckily, when we ran out of water, like people, 10 years ago were very much more understanding than they would be now.
Yeah. 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 They would have your head.
Oh, if it happened to you today, you would not survive it.
No,
Like people,
no, no. Absolutely.
they,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my God.
So
For
yeah, I
sure.
mean, yeah, back then people were like, I'll just wait till the next one. But
So when an idea hits you like that now, do you pause for a second and say, is this really a good idea? Or do you,
oh, yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. You, you. I like to tell people somehow I became the responsible one in this life, and I've yet to understand. So you know what I
Absolutely.
mean.
Yeah,
So,
oh, totally. Oh my God.
but yeah, I do try to look at all the things, right? And
Yeah.
it's hard to have one foot in the future and one foot in the past. Like
Yeah.
it's always the thing, right? Like,
Right. Right.
and you and
Yeah.
I both would show up, and you're like M&Ms and Gatorade. What else do you need, right?
Right.
Like, you're truly,
Yeah.
and but now we understand, runners need more, right? Like we needed more back then.
Yeah. Probably why we're running faster these days.
Yeah, and we needed like a little more diversity, right? Like
Mhm. Yeah.
so,
Options. Yep.
yeah, and especially as people's diets change. I mean, that like I said, like I remember we would run these races and would come to a table of wax Pepsi cups with Gatorade in them, and you're like bonus, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
and I know that we just as people it changed for good, right? It helps people finish.
Totally.
It's not no one did it out of being cruel to ultra runners back then. It's
No.
just that's how
That's how it
it
was.
was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, and I've even seen lads have to change. You remember I ran the first Barkley Fall Classic, and I came to an aid station, and there was just individually wrapped prunes in a box on the back of a four, which is awesome. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but now I know that can't exist.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's and I remember when I first started the race that you were referring to earlier, Solly, that was the Frosty Foot. And it was my first year putting on an ultra, the 50K.
Yeah,
And I had what you and I would term a pretty generous offering, but people came in as like, you didn't even have PB and J's. And I was like, oh, like, yeah.
yes,
I didn't know how to respond. I was just like PB and J's, like, it never hit
yeah,
me. Like, and I was just like, all right. So then it was like, and then it was starting to ask like other RDs, like, hey, what do you put at your aid stations for a 50K? Like, am
yeah,
I that far off? Like, and that's when I started really kind of expanding and talking to others about like, well, what do you do? Like you think you have it all figured out until like a runner comes and they're like, that sucked. And I'm like,
yeah,
whoa,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh my God, what didn't I do? But
I agree. It's very tough. It changes so much, right?
yeah, oh
And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
why like we run races also
yep,
because you
yep.
can like we just said see the trends, right?
Oh,
Like
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
Absolutely. I mean, having Dale Garland, after running Hard Rock and coming back and looking and reanalyzing Hellbender, I reached out to Dale and to to Craig, Thornley, because both of them have obviously so much experience. And,
Yes.
I kind of, I said, hey, like, do you mind if I look at your safety plans, and emergency medical plans and such?
Yeah.
And they sent them, not a question. They're like, yep, here we go. And like, and like basically their whole operating plan. I went through it and I was like, oh my God, like I am not thinking of so many things here, which
Oh,
was, super helpful. Um,
yeah. And it's awesome that I love that people
yes.
in the ultra running like Craig can and
Yeah.
everyone can be like resources to other RDs that and
Yes. Yeah.
Craig's an awesome guy and he's helped me tremendously over like 6 7 years. Like
Mhm.
he always is good,
Yep.
and he is a great athlete, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
never DNF'd a race
That's incredible.
ever.
Yeah.
And
That's incredible.
I think my favorite Craig story is like I came out to run American River. This is maybe like 7 8 years ago, 50.
Yep.
And it's just like an old school was, now it's fun. And I blew up. I wasn't trained, And this poor man waited was at the finish line cold at the top of Auburn waiting on me just to take me out for a beer. Like
Oh.
that is the community
Yep.
that I love, right? Like
Yep. Yep.
the
Yeah.
that the RDO Western States will
Yeah.
wait on your slow ass so he
Oh,
can take
totally.
you out for a beer, right?
Yeah. No, that's freaking awesome.
Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like he's just so personable, like Craig, whether he knows you or not, he's just so friendly and personable. Like when I went up to grab my buckle this summer, he pulled me aside and we had like a little, moment, just kind of
Yeah.
recognizing it. And oh man, it was heartwarming. I've told
Yeah.
the story before too. I was in a panel with him and we were at the trail running conference, which you've attended, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was in a panel with Craig and two other RDs, and I'm not going to mention the other two because the one just like attacked me and belittled me because of how I do things. Like I'm, for Hellbender, I set up the nonprofit, and I wasn't getting paid for it,
Yeah.
for RDing, and he just attacked me because it's all about capitalism, right? And like Craig just leans over and gently says to me, "I love you." And
Yeah. Yeah.
that like that struck, and I was like, I will do anything I can to go run Western States and be a
Yeah.
part of this man's race, because he
I,
understood me, and
yeah.
that was
And
awesome.
so it's funny you say that. He's a very humble person, right? That's it.
Yep.
And like you said, and to talk about that, we were together and he was doing this like panel interview also, right?
Mm-hmm.
And before it started, the mics were on. He looked at the two people and he said, if I say anything wrong, correct me right now, right then.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
that's he has no ego, right? Like
Right.
he just said,
Right.
they're talking about some very controversial topics, right? Like, well, not controversial, like just some emerging topics.
Yep.
And I was like, man, what a person. Like,
Yeah.
right? It was like,
Right.
correct me right when I'm wrong. Do not
Right.
wait. Right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was like, that spoke volumes to me because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, like I was like, I don't like I would might fight somebody. I don't, I'm not
uh,
really, but
no,
but
but yeah,
but
he checks his ego at the door.
yeah, yeah,
He is definitely. I admire Craig, and that's why I reached out to him. I reached out to multiple people that
yeah,
put on these tough mountain races just to kind of get a feel for their safety and
yeah.
wellness.
And
Um, but
and that safety plan for really variable mountain 100s has to be pretty tough, right? Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
it's a thing. I mean,
Right. Right.
it's
Yeah. Well, after that China incident, it really should have sparked a lot more, kind of prompts for people to implement
yeah,
a little bit more and to kind of rehash their safety plans. Whether it happened or not, I don't know, but that
and,
was
and
a red flag to me. I was like,
I,
whoa, like,
I think for the organizers and also think for the participants, you
yes,
need to remember a lot of the code is take responsibility for yourself, right? Like
yeah,
we have the ability to run for hours.
Yeah.
So, right when
Yeah.
we're doing training runs in the mountains and we're by ourselves for hours, like we have to have a plan,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
and I have
Yeah.
to have a plan of
Oh,
what
totally.
happens when
Yeah.
things go fucking sideways.
Yeah.
And they
Absolutely.
like to. They do like to.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
just
totally.
laugh. You know,
It's
we
it's 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 scary. Like when I think about where my mental state was when I started Hellbender to what it evolved to,
yeah,
because like when I first started, I was like, well, these are experienced ultra runners. They should have some kind of knowledge and
yes.
pack what they need. That's not the reality. And that's where I had to evolve to, was learning that I need to state what ultra runners should have on them,
Well,
um,
oh yes, yeah, and you very clearly, even at the Yeti 100, when they
yeah,
go back up, we've had people every year have to visit to the hospital because they get in hypothermic
right,
conditions, right?
right,
Because
right.
they've been running in 80
Hmm.
and now they're in 40
Yeah,
two,
right,
right? Like, and you
right.
have, and
Yeah,
like now I have to say to everyone, like you said, you have to have a jacket,
yeah,
gloves, right? Like this
right,
is not,
right.
this is not up for debate. And
Yeah,
people,
totally,
you know what people's biggest like pushback is weight. And I
totally,
have never
totally.
found those things to be like that much weight. Like,
Well, yeah, and not having it has potentially put me at risk for DNF more
yes.
times, than it should, right?
Yeah.
Like not have, and that's where I learned my lesson. I don't want people to have to learn that same lesson. That should not be something that even remotely is a possibility for somebody to be a DNF because they didn't have the equipment they needed, and so overstating that it's I think, and for Hellbender I put it in as many avenues as I could. I had the
Yeah.
Hellbender podcast, I did a YouTube video on it, I put it on the website, the participant guide, emails, like just tried to reinforce it, and people still did not have what they needed. So it's
It's a very it's tough, right?
yeah,
Like, and I know
yeah,
I get it. Like I don't want to carry all that gear,
no,
you know,
like who does, but
and but
yeah,
I pursue a lot of big mountains and Washington
totally,
volcanoes, and
yeah,
sometimes you get just stalled, like,
yeah,
and sometimes you things don't go right. It's
oh yeah,
and I want to keep doing this shit, like, I
right,
mean,
right, yeah,
to me there's no honor in perishing on the side of
no,
Mount
no,
Baker, right?
no,
Like
no,
I,
no,
I'm out there recreating, guys, like,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
having fun. I'm not
What's a few
trying.
ounces, right? Like what's a few ounces in
And
your pocket?
I tell people, even in H9, a 90-degree race in August, I carry things that, what if I have to be stationary and I can't
Mhm.
move for 6 to 8 hours? I bring things to stay okay in that. And
Yep.
I even have like a little $2 blinky light I wear in that, because it's pretty wooded there, and I
Yeah.
turn it on before the race. And that way, if I fall off the trail on a cliff, a
Yeah.
chopper can see a blink,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Right.
so I mean,
Right.
I try, like,
Right.
nobody wants to think about that, but
No. No. No.
everyone should, right?
Right.
And
Right.
because you want to keep doing this, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's not,
Oh, absolutely.
and just be as safe as you can,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Well,
um,
I mean, it's incredible. Hard Rock does not have a mandatory kit, like they're still on like we assume you should know what you're doing if you're coming to this race, which, most likely most people do,
yeah,
but you still
yeah,
have like, I mean, it's hard when we see the people like Killian Jornet that's like has these minimal kits, but we also have to remember how fast he's moving through these mountains. But he still has the potential, just as you said, to be stationary for multiple hours if he gets injured,
yeah,
and that's
yes,
that's where it's like, okay, well, we see this guy and as a speedster he's awesome and we can be inspired by him, but we should not take away too much from the elites. These guys are moving so much faster, potentially 10 to 12, maybe even more hours faster than people mid to back of the pack, which requires a completely different gear list. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's
When you finish in the daylight, you don't need much,
no, no, not
right? Yeah,
you don't, you don't,
yeah,
right? But like,
no,
us that are going through the night and
yeah,
potentially another one, like things
yeah.
like UTMB and Hard Rock, that requires a completely different gear set.
Yes.
So like, we see these, and that's where I think the mentality of the
And,
minimalist comes into
and
play. They're like, oh, these guys are doing it right. They're minimalist. It's going to be so light. I can move so much faster. But just that little bit that you
uh,
put in there could save you hours. It's
uh,
like, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
well, sorry, and Europe, I've run a couple races in Europe and mountain races,
Hmm.
and they have stopped me. I've been stopped twice in one race for mandatory gear checks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
like don't play over
Yeah.
there,
No,
right?
no.
And
Yeah.
and and
UTMB did the same. Yep.
and sometimes weather just goes sideways. Like you
Yes.
start off and it's sunny, right? And
Hmm.
Chamonix, and then wherever, and then
Yeah.
you're like, oh no, right? It's helling. I'm cold. I'm
Yes. Yeah.
stationary, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
you
Bighorn almost got me because I just didn't have the right gear and I didn't pack it. That was part of the problem. Is
yeah.
like, I was like, I'll never need this. Of course I did. you know,
Yeah.
the weather forecast changed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap, this is really gonna suck. So yeah, I
I
mean,
I
overpacking is what I always tell my athletes. Overpack. Like you may look at the
yes.
conditions and you're 5 days out, and then the day or two before that weather changes, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, I don't have X, Y, or Z. Then what do you do? Like, can you go out and get it? I mean, maybe it's you're not in a place that has that accessibility, but
Yeah. And moreover now it feels like weather changes quite frequently. So
mhm.
you know what I mean?
Oh,
So
totally. I totally
uh,
agree. Yeah. No. Oh my god. Um. Well, and going back to the races that you put on, you had mentioned that you're going to put on two new races in New Mexico.
yes, New
uh,
Mexico.
how did that come about?
Like you know how we usually fight to get a permit.
Yes.
So I was reached out by uh, the government, and it's Smokey the Bear's 80th birthday,
No.
and asked if I would put on an event to celebrate Smokey's 80th birthday, where Smokey was found and is and now laid to rest in Capitan, New Mexico.
Oh, how interesting.
Right. So I thought about what I could do and make a race accessible to a lot of people, to come. And so I found this great place where Smokey, next to pretty close to where Smokey was laid to rest.
Okay.
So I thought about doing a race in Capitan and New Mexico. And so if you hit 80 miles, you get a Smokey Bear birthday 80-mile buckle. So,
Nice.
and the pack of pickups at the Smoky Mountain Museum where Smokey is laid to rest. It's a little town, and it's very beautiful in New Mexico.
How
And
cool.
then
What time of year is
uh,
this?
in April.
Okay.
And then at the end of April, I have a point to point 50K called Cactus to Cloud in New Mexico.
Okay.
So really look forward to that. So right outside of, it'll be, yeah, it'll be very fun. and well, hopefully it'll be fun. It's very beautiful. I fell in love with New Mexico when I went out there to scope the course and everything for that. I was like, this is such a wild and wonderful place, right? Like Billy the Kid, like name it, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
There's some pretty cool history out
I
there.
would just like be running, and there would be just wild horses everywhere. Like sometimes I wouldn't be running; I would stop by like a local brewery, and there'd be wild horses behind in the parking lot. It's so crazy. I was just like, I forgot like just how wild and wonderful, like and there's great things to visit there. I went to the White Sands National Park and was just, my mouth was on the floor. It's so beautiful. I was like, am I on snow? Am I at the beach? It's just,
Yeah.
25-foot high white sand dunes, uh, and then of course aliens, right? So it's like all of the things in one state. So
That's awesome.
and beautiful running. Like, you can do. So when I was out there, like got a couple really good trainings runs in at like 9,000 feet, 10,000 feet up there. I was
Nice.
just like getting held at that. I love it. I was like, man, it's so awesome, but
That's cool.
I fell in love with New Mexico, and I was like, who else better than a Yeti to celebrate Smokey the Bear's 80th birthday, right? So,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. So that's how it came about, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for people, right? And it's
Yes.
just a way to come together again and have fun, and
So cool.
think about these, the icon that Smokey is in the United States, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So what what is stirring around in your brain? Do you have any other races or formats that you're thinking of that you would care to share?
No, I don't have any that I'm, thinking about. Like, kind of right here. I am going to flip the snake bite, like on like the second or third year. It's the 11th year this year, was at nighttime. I am going
Hmm.
to flip it back to night
I saw you.
because I think
Yeah.
people need more like experience in trail running at night. It's
Yeah.
hard to find more these days, right? And
That's cool.
right where you just start at,
Yeah.
8 o'clock at night
Yeah.
and run overnight.
That's
And
cool.
that way, if you have 100, right, perfect training,
Hmm.
stay up all day, show up with a headlamp, get some
Yeah.
overnight training. Like,
Yeah.
and we all need that, right?
Yeah.
So, and with
Yeah.
a fun group. So that's mine. But,
That's
you
cool.
know, I have nothing else on the horizon, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just trying to maintain, right? Like,
Anything on the bucket list for you?
yes,
And it could be
for me, yes, and Hellgate has been on my
okay.
bucket list for a real long time,
All right.
and
And did you
I
sign up
sent
this
it.
year?
I put in an application.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
like register.
Right. 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 Yeah. And do you have a do you have a relationship with Dr. Horton?
we've met a couple of times. We are on opposite spectrums of
Yes.
race
Yes.
directing,
Yes.
right? Right,
Yes.
as you might know. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
here we both have the passion, right,
Yep.
of
Yeah. Totally.
people and running.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
rivals my own passion. But I sent him a little note. It was like, Dave, like this might be the last time I have a good chance last year, of
Yeah.
finishing Hellgate. You know what I mean? Like, please let me in, and don't let it snow 3 inches. So that's
Oh,
one I've had on my bucket list, just growing up in the
yeah.
southeast, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Sure. Yeah.
I've always had that on my list, and felt pretty
Right on.
good.
Yeah.
I would like to go back to Miwok
Okay.
this year. I
The
like
100K.
I love that distance. To
Yeah.
me, it's good effort. You get to sleep in your own bed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of you. If you're fast enough, you can be out to dinner with everybody.
Right. Right. Right.
So, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I might go back there. And then
That's cool.
I'm just preparing for Javelina in 2 weeks. So
Oh, right
that's
on.
one of my favorite races, but it's very hard because it's going to be like 90, 91, right?
Mm. Yeah.
But I do like the atmosphere of Javelina. I think it's a very fun one, and
Mm.
I tell people it's the only place in my life like where I get kind of irritated. Like the year before last, I was just broken, and I was just
Oh.
barely making it. And here comes these people buying like turtle costumes. Hi, you know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
this perfect storm. Like, I am burning up, and these people are in turtle costumes and surviving. Right?
That is
So,
crazy.
you know
Oh
what
my
I mean?
God.
Like,
Yeah.
I was just like, what a weird perspective. So this year I got one of those like cooling hat, like those big hats. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I still think I'm gonna suffer a whole lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's really runnable and it's hard not to just be moving the whole time, right? And
Yep.
then
Yep.
when it's 91, it's just all going to come unraveled. You're just kind of hoping for when it don't come towards the end,
Right. Right.
right?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Javelina. Phew. Yeah. Well, Aravaipa, they put on some cool races, and like you said, I see our sport growing.
Yeah.
And it's good because the popularity is growing, and we have to meet demand somehow because man, there's just there's so many runners wanting to run races, and without creating new ones, we're going to be in short supply because it's I don't know if the growth of the racing is going to meet the growth of the sport itself.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept to think about because I mean, obviously, the more popular races, it's getting harder and harder to get into.
Yes.
Um, which I don't- do you have any of those that are on your bucket list?
No, not really real hard ones, but I do know what you mean. I mean, even Javelina, I noticed, had a 280 person wait list for
Wow,
both distances in
wow,
each. So yeah, I mean, so they sold out, and then
Yeah.
they have that deep a wait list for each one. Like,
Right.
but you're right about the popularity. And I always, you know, tell people, like, some people don't get into some of the races, fill up quick, right? That I have, and other people have, and I'm like, I just like, it's hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I
Yes.
typically, probably like you do, look at the calendar and try to make certain races priorities. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I have alerts on my phone, right? You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
Yes. They're on my calendar. When does the
yeah.
lottery open? When does when
Ultra
does
sign up
registration
sent me
open?
an email the other day. Mountain Mist open. 2 minutes
Yeah.
later, I was registered. Right. I mean, that's how I do. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to, right?
Totally.
These
Oh yeah.
days, you
Or
know what
else
I
you're
mean?
left
It's
out. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
and even though they've allowed a bigger field, I was just like, I'm not putting that at risk. I want to
Yeah.
run that, right? And
Yeah.
so that's what I usually typically do, is that ultrasound has like really good reminders when a
Yes.
race is going to open and
Yep.
all that.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
I just make it a point these days now, right? It's like,
Oh yeah, yeah,
please,
yeah. Well, it's interesting too, like what we've noticed, and I'm not putting on or a part of Hellbender anymore, but what we've noticed is that like they'll open registration, it will be kind of registrations will get a little bump when it opens, but like it's really after the lotteries that the
yes,
race
yeah,
starts to fill up, because everybody's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, and that's hard to plan out your year,
yeah.
and
Oh, I
it's
agree.
yeah,
And
that's tough, like because you're waiting on, and then if you don't get in, then you're like, oh well, what's my fallback? Like maybe you have a fallback plan, but some people don't, and then then they go to look for a race, and they're like, oh, this looks awesome, it's sold out, and it's
yeah,
250 people on the wait list. So that's what's
yeah.
that's what's difficult.
Yeah, you know what I do with some is, I will, like, if people contact me, like, who, they're like, hey, I'm in this lottery, I
Mhm.
really want to, I'll give them like a pre-registration spot, you right,
Nice.
where I
Yeah.
got like, but when they can sign up with everyone, they have to sign up with everyone else. But
Yeah.
I try to be
That's
accommodating to
yeah, that's
people who
that's a
have
great
a
idea.
good race schedule, right? Because I know
Yeah.
they need trainers leading up to it, right?
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it's tough these
Oh
days.
yeah.
Jeez. I mean, I pulled the Yeti 100. It used to be a lottery, because I was just like, I would just get bombarded with emails from people, right? And I was just
Right.
like, let's just sign up. Hell, if ultra sign up crashes, screw
Yeah.
them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I just, because people, a lottery that's not like visible. I don't have the capacity to put things in a turnstile and pull them. Like, and who wants to see? I
Yeah.
don't want to see that.
No.
And I was like, I think everyone just needs to be visible and needs to be
Yeah.
open, all right, and just
Yeah.
get up. And I've defaulted now to get up, sign up, right?
Right.
Like, and I try to put the races on like holidays, like Thanksgiving or Halloween, where,
Yeah.
I mean, where typically might leave work a little more early, things like that. So you
Yeah.
have time to sign up.
Yeah. Yeah. I just did my beginning of my 2024, and what I was noticing was like the registration fees, like man, like I mean, and most of them are on ultra sign up. I was like, oh my gosh, like like what how much money do you need to make off of like
Yeah.
the
I
registration
I
platform?
I don't know if you're feeling it where you are, but like here, a lot of the lands that we run on
Mhm.
have went from these basic fees to now they are capturing gross amounts.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Totally.
it's not like a little bit of gross amount, like where,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 And
so
that's tough,
yeah,
especially like, when you're looking at your finances and how much you're going to charge. And I wasn't referring to just the registration
no,
fee. I
no.
was referring to like, how much ultra sign up is making off of the
Oh,
registration fee.
oh, their processing fee
Yeah,
is
their
a lot.
processing
Yeah.
fee. Yeah,
But
I was
yeah,
referring to their processing fee.
I've known everything, and I'm just like, I get it's hard, right?
Yeah.
I like, how about this? I keep Snakebite the original price that it was, $79, right?
Nice. Nice.
But really, really, like, those agencies, like,
Yeah.
it's a hot, like, sometimes it's just, it's a lot, right? And I
Yeah.
noticed
Yeah.
that processing fee,
Yeah,
ultra sign
totally.
up, is
Yeah.
creeping.
Yeah.
So if you're 100 milers, $350,
Right.
well, that's another big chunk back there,
Right.
right?
Yeah, on
So
the processing fee. It's,
yeah, on
it's like,
the
dang.
on the participant, right? So
Mhm.
it sucks, right?
Oh,
Like, I
totally.
mean,
Yeah. No, I mean,
but
oh
I feel
man,
like everywhere in this world now, everything is up like 18-20%, right? Like
it is.
everywhere I
It
go, it's
is.
like
Yeah.
eggs,
Yeah.
cheese, but
Yeah, no, and like you said, on your side of things for your
yeah,
registration fee, that's when we go back to DuPont, when I talk about the DuPont race, that
yeah,
was one of their number one gripes was like, well, we're just not making enough money off of events. And I was like, well, that's your fault. Like, like you're charging me this like at DuPont, it was just a one-time fee, like, here's the permit fee. It
right.
wasn't like we're gonna take it a percentage of your gross or anything like that, which as a lot of times like the Forest Service will do. Uh,
Yes, yeah,
but I mean, so it just depends on the entity. But like, that was one of their complaints, and so they just had an in person kind of like, express your grievances. So I went in and I said like, hey, like we love events at DuPont. Like, from my perspective as a runner, I loved having events there as well. And putting on races there was great too. But like they said they weren't making enough money. Well, why don't you create a different fee structure, like so that things can
yeah.
happen. But oftentimes like we don't get a lot of voices that just go out there, and maybe it's because they don't know about these opportunities to go out there and voice their opinion to the forest.
Yeah.
But there's all these forums that people can get involved in and
Well,
just speak their mind or write a letter.
Well,
Or
also think about this. So let's think about Hellbender and
Mhm.
people that come from all over to run it.
Right.
All the beds and heads,
Yep.
all the people in hotels, all the people in local restaurants,
Right.
local run stores. That's why you have events in these. Like, why
Mhm.
do when people say, "Why do I have events in Bristol?" Because we are left with tourism there,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Races are fun. People want to run them,
Totally.
and tourism brings people in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But but somehow I'm with you. I stand like some of these public agencies is our land, public land.
Yeah.
These events bring people from all over there
Yeah. Yeah.
and really stimulate the local economy.
For sure.
For
Yeah.
those, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I try to let agencies I work with like understand the what we're trying to do, and
Right.
it's very good. Like there's like a program you can run where you people can put in their cell phone numbers. It's option, and it will not. They don't know the person's names, but it tracks where they went in the
Mm.
town,
Hmm.
and you should see the data. Like it's
Wow.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
uh, like how about this? I go over near Asheville. Like
Right.
it's a lot of tourism, right? To
Yeah.
all the breweries, everything, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
and it really stimulates that whole economy, right? Because
Hmm.
people have to stay somewhere, right?
Yes. Yes.
Then they have a
Yep.
down day, so they go to the Biltmore, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people don't see that what's happening
No,
to
that's
where
true.
these
That's true. And the
ultra,
turnover within the agencies themselves, I don't know like how often you deal with
yeah,
it, but
oh yeah,
we dealt with was like it was constantly a new person, like when we
yeah,
dealt with the Blue Ridge Parkway, for instance, which is national park. Not national park. What do they call anyway? There was in our span of permitting, we'll call it a 6 month span. We went through four permitting agents, four different people. And each time, even though it was a digital permit, they could not find that digital permit. So it was like, it's really hard when you have that kind of turnover because
yes,
you
yeah,
don't have, the same person throughout. They don't understand your vision and you have to remind them each
yeah,
time what your vision is. That becomes difficult,
yeah.
especially when you have multiple entities that you're trying to communicate with.
Well, yes, and as a RD, we think about those things, right? Like,
Right.
and try not to let the participant ever think about that. A
Yes.
runner,
Right.
runner, like when I run American River 50, I'm like, I've just spanned three counties here, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like sidewalks, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to deal with that,
I hear
like,
you. I hear you.
right? I was just like, oh
Yeah.
man, but I think we'll see a change in the coming future where people, where these start value tourism and what ultra running brings. It's a very low environmental impact on
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
and high impact on tourism and local economy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
That- Yep.
and I like that even ultra sign up, opened up Trails to Zero, so as a way for runners to offset the carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that's a good deal for each race is Trails to Zero. So as people travel, like
Yes.
you can try to offset your carbon footprint a
That's
little
cool.
more, right?
Right.
So and then is ultra running the only one that kind of leading those charges about carbon offsets and traveling to race. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like tourism, right? We've like you know, well, races typically take place in these very small towns, right? And mountain
Yeah.
towns, and
Right.
that's and it's their runners are welcome, right? Because they are great visitors of the community because they appreciate it, they run in it, they feel it, right?
Yep. Yep.
They're and so I try to remind all the the
That's
folks
awesome.
I'm with in permitting, right?
Yeah.
And I like go, hey, let's remember the good of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's a shit ton of work. I know it's a shit ton of work, right?
Yeah.
Most of these agencies have been stripped down by the U.S. government to no staff, right?
Right. Right.
Right? Where they used to have five people, now it's two, right? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like I understand it gets stressed, but I try to say, hey, let's think about this from all
Yeah.
the
Well,
Airbnbs and businesses in
totally,
town.
totally. And
Like
and the more communicative you are, the more organized you are, the better your operating plan if
yeah,
you submit that to them. The easier their job is,
yeah, yeah,
which I think they appreciate, like
yeah,
that's a big piece of it too, is just
yeah,
like the more upfront you are about everything, saying, hey, here, like if I were to be sick and like somebody else had to take it over, this is what I would hand them. And this is, bucks to nails. This is everything,
yes,
like they could run the race without me being there. And then when they see that, they're like, oh, this guy's got his stuff together, whereas like other times if people just come in, they're like, hey, I just want to kind of put on this event,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and there's no plan in place like that, and but it was also like I'm not going to say that was like how I was up front. That was a long time learning, and actually it was one of the rangers that was like, I'd like to see an operating plan, and I'd like it to include X, Y, and Z.
yes.
And I was like, wow, that's brilliant. Like so but this is things
Yeah,
that oftentimes we don't think about, right?
no, yeah, I agree. And just like you, I had to come on. I was just like you. I would walk in the office
Yeah,
a decade ago and be like, "Hey, we want to have a race." They're like,
yeah, yeah,
"Sounds
yeah,
good," right?
yeah. Right,
And now
right.
I'm sending over like complex GPX, right? You know what I mean? Like maps, where even they can dial in on runners. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like,
yeah. Right.
and
Yeah.
all this
Oh,
but also
it's
we're just
incredible.
getting smarter with safety
Yeah, we
protocols
are.
and
We are. Yes.
right, like
Ability to
technology
communicate and track is just it's
tech
vastly improved. So it's that's
technology has
yeah.
really come a long way, and I think that's why most big races will have to have tracking all in the
Yeah.
future, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
even though even though you still can't get it right, like sometimes you're just out of range of satellite and cell and you're
Yep.
just kind of in that void,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
even this year the Yeti 100, like people call me like, well, it's taken a while to catch up. And I'm like, well, they are just like in the middle of nowhere, right? But it's not like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes. We're at the
And
mercy of how good the technology is. Yeah.
yeah, and I
So
think, but overall, I think it's safe and keeps people like they
yeah.
can see you finish, see you
Right.
go, and it's good
Right.
for
Or at least you
races.
have a point, right? Like where, maybe where it went out, to
Yeah.
where they're going, you're like,
And
well,
it'll
they
cap
should be in this area here, right?
that's exactly right. Right. And that new data they build and
Yeah.
software like will, you know, alert you if like their track is, stationary or they're showed up too late. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So
It's,
I think things are going in awesome
yes.
directions
Yeah.
of safety for runners in the USA. Right. So
Oh yeah. And like I want to be cognizant of your time too. So if we start running long, you just say the
yeah.
word here.
Oh, no
Um,
worries.
okay. The other piece of this, and I just got a survey that asked like, how do you feel about drones at a race? What's your impression? Does that bring something to the race? Do you enjoy that? Like it's cool to see the live coverage, but like, I don't know if you've been at a race where you personally
Yeah.
ran and there's drones flying overhead, but what have your takeaways been?
Man, I don't. That's a very complex question for me because I don't like them when I'm running, but I
Yeah.
really, really like the fucking footage when I'm not
Yeah.
running the
And I'm
race,
the
right?
same
Like,
way. I'm the same way.
and I try, I look, I think I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like I just said, I think probably a lot of people are with me. Like you hate them when you're running,
Hmm.
but if you're at home watching a race, you're like, look at that,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
Killian make look at
Right.
look at
Right.
Killian make the move on Jim Wobsley. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
or
No,
whatever.
yeah.
Like
All right. I
so
totally
I
agree.
definitely think that is something that I feel that way, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Because we go out to the woods, to kind of get away from all of that, right? To get away from technology and noise
yes, yeah,
so having them overhead is kind of that reminder that of what you're trying to get away from. And that's what I expressed, in that survey
yeah.
was
I
just like I try to get away from, all of that. And like that just is a buzzing reminder of things that I don't want to be near at that point.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak too loudly about it because I
No.
found that things that I hate, I come back like a year later and like
Yeah, no,
and,
but again, it's part of our evolving sport, right? And it's not always we can't have the ability to do anything about it, right? Like, like we can't say, hey, like, can you just go away? Because usually we don't see the pilot, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's very yeah, I'm with you. And I bet a lot of runners stand with us where when they're out running and they don't want like drones overhead, but then they enjoy the footage at
right,
home because it
right.
makes them connected to their friends in the
And
race,
and it's not like
right?
it's a constant, right? Like it's not going to follow you the entire time. It's just like you may have like a kind of a quick overhead shot, and then it's gone. But it is that moment. It kind of takes you out of that present moment where like you're
Now,
just all of a sudden distracted. But
yeah. Now, if I'm enjoying life outside of an event, a race, I could understand if this was public land and the
yeah,
public is sharing this land. I'm saying no drones.
yeah,
There's a lot of times I'll be in like really, really amazing spaces and a drone comes into view, and
hmm,
there's just no drones allowed in those,
yeah,
in
yeah,
national, but like
right,
and that's troublesome. Like, so I still say keep with that, right? Like, we
yeah,
never want to
yeah.
ruin someone else's experience in that environment, right?
No,
And
yes, great point.
so
Yep.
for that reason, I would more than likely say no drones,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
because most races are run on public lands,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the public is out there enjoying them that
That's
time of the race, and
that's a great point.
I found a lot of annoyance with drones when I'm just out enjoying a hike and being
Yeah.
with others and,
Yep.
trying to. So I definitely would default to no damn drones. Like
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, yeah. It's oftentimes like, when you get into a more populated aid station that you're going to see them anyway. So it's,
yeah.
and that like when I was at Bigfoot and ran Bigfoot, like I came into, I think it was Tickatat, which is, kind of later into the race, I think over 120 into the race. And you're going into your second night, right? And you're just like
Yeah.
you hear this drone and you're like, oh, dude, like like that's so there it's I don't know, like as I said, I understand it's going to be there whether we prefer it or not. It's not like we can sign off and vote to say like yes, allow them at the race or not. But as you said, I would prefer they keep them away from the public lands, not only for our peace of mind, but for others that are trying to enjoy the sanctity of what they're there for, the
Yeah. Oh,
outdoors.
100. Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, no. As there's a whole nother avenue when we talk about
Yeah.
the media
Uh,
accessibility, but
yeah. And I think we just keep evolving and like
mhm.
try to keep, and I think there's a lot of enough people in the sport to do the right thing and keep the keep the boat moving forward in the correct way, so
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Oh man. Well, like I said, I want to be cognizant of your time.
yeah,
We've
yeah,
been
oh
we've been
yeah, we
going. I'm
can,
sure we could
yeah,
keep going.
that's good. No, yeah, thank you, Aaron, I really
Oh man.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
dude. It's been a pleasure, Jason. I really
oh,
do.
thank you.
I've enjoyed the conversation and especially the topics we brought up. Best way to connect with you?
Oh, Yeti Trainers .com
Cool.
or Yeti Trail Runners at Gmail.
Okay, perfect.
But yeah, yes.
Put that in
So
the show
awesome.
notes, and I'll have people,
Okay.
like have them check out that New Mexico race. That sounds awesome, especially
Oh,
celebrating Smokey's 80th. That's pretty cool, man.
yes. Yeah, that's awesome.
That is cool. Yeah. So
Well,
thank
thank
you
you
again,
so.
Jason.
Hey,
Yeah.
no, thank you, and I'll see you soon, buddy.
All right, man. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Wow, Jason, thank you for such a great conversation. I really enjoyed where it took us. We had nothing premeditated, pre-planned. I didn't have any questions or topics that I really wanted to get into. Just wanted to talk to Jason, and man, that conversation unfolded, and we got into a lot of stuff, and I really enjoyed it. So, thank you, Jason, for coming on and having that conversation with me. Got some really interesting conversations coming up as well. Meredith Terranova, nutritionist to the ultra runners and to everybody, but Meredith, I had a great conversation with her, and she kind of picked apart my diet and my nutrition plan strategies for my races, and just was letting me know where I was making mistakes, what I could be doing better, and giving me some strategies to move forward. And so I thought, well, if I'm making this mistake or these mistakes, perhaps others are too and can learn from that. So Meredith is going to come on and talk about everything that I learned and kind of dispel some things that I was going through and thought I was doing correctly. So we're gonna talk here pretty soon. I just can't wait for that conversation with her. I'm also recording part 2 with Scotty Coomer from 10 Junk Miles. I'm going to be on the 10 Junk Miles podcast, so I'll alert you when that comes out. I'm also having another conversation with another coach about the female menstrual cycle and how that affects females in their training. An interesting discussion and something that can be tough for females to discuss with a male coach, although females are becoming more and more comfortable, and I think males are becoming more and more comfortable in having that conversation. It has taken me some time to become comfortable with having that conversation, but it is something I'm more than happy to discuss with females, especially if it can help their training and racing. So we're going to talk more about it so I can learn alongside you, some things that can help female athletes. So we're going to have that conversation as well. I have others in the works, so some really cool guests coming up on some range of topics, which is what I love about this world of podcasting, is we can discuss so many different things, not just within our sport but in life. Just really, really enjoying the capacity to have these conversations. So I hope you're enjoying them as well. And if you have a topic that you would like to be discussed, or you yourself want to be a guest, by all means, let me know. Give me a holler. Happy to have you or somebody that you'd like to hear from on the podcast if they're willing to do so. So thank you for that. I continue to want to say thank you to my Patreon supporters. As always, their continued support helps me keep bringing these guests on, keep recording, taking the time to do so. I really, really enjoy this, but I want to thank them especially for being a part of Patreon, and for you all for listening. My listenership has grown. The weekly downloads is increasing, and I really appreciate that. It makes me feel great that many people are starting to listen and be turned on to this podcast. So thank you for being a part of this podcast. If you feel that it's helpful or you like the conversation and want to share it with others, please do so. That really helps this listenership grow. And, it's not the point of doing the podcast, but it really does help me and inspire me to keep doing a better job at doing it. So thank you very much. Other things that are going on, my goodness, I think I burned a hole in my wallet with Ultra sign up this past weekend. I had to have some serious conversations, as we often do and should do, with the people in our lives that are affected by our races and our training. I wanted to run Hellbender in 2024. But that meant in talking with a number of people, because what's happening is Hellbender starts Friday morning at 4:30 a.m. and my kids, my high schoolers that I coach, will be racing their state qualifier on Saturday at probably 11 a.m. So my goal is to make it and finish within that window before regional starts, and have my wife bring me over to regionals so that I can be there for the kids for their state qualifying meet. But that meant communicating with my coaches, my coaching staff, to make sure they were on board with me doing that, because I would miss practice the day before. I had to communicate with my kids and let them know what I was thinking. These kids are my priority, and I wanted to make sure they understood that, and that they were aware of what I wanted to do, and that they were behind it and supported that decision. I had to talk to my wife and my family and say, hey, is this okay? Does this make sense? Can I spend money here and engage my time and training and make this my focus for May of 2024? So with all those approvals, as you saw or may have saw on social media, I signed up for Hellbender, which then led me down the road to figuring out a good build. I like to have some races to build. This year I really didn't have many races outside the Grand Slam. I only did one as a qualifier for Vermont, but I wanted to have some races to kind of get back into that mindset of racing. I want to go fast at Hellbender. I want to try to do as best I can at Hellbender and run a fast time. So I'm going to re-engage my training. I've decided I'm going to train myself, and listen to my body and just kind of go with what I know works for Aaron Saft and train myself. So I'm going to be sharing my training and my journey. You can see it on Strava. So if you want to follow me on Strava, just look up Aaron Saft running his life. You'll find me. And follow along in that journey. But other races that I signed up for, January, the South Mountains half marathon. I signed up for just the half to kind of kick off the season and get my racing going. In February, I signed up for Cabin Fever 50K in West Virginia. We're super excited about that. Not done a 50K or ultra in West Virginia, so it will be a new state for me to do an ultra in. I have raced there in sub-ultra events, but I'm really excited to run through the New River Valley Gorge. So super, super excited for that one. Let's see. No races No, there is a race in March. I am signed up for the Heartbreaker 50 miler, which will be, obviously very specific to Hellbender, sharing many of the same trails as Hellbender. So, signed up for the Heartbreaker 50 miler, and then nothing in April, and race Hellbender in May. My training has just kind of started picking up. Going to take my time building my base here. I need to get better about running more zone 2. I find myself running quite frequently with my wife, and she's a little quick. And my heart rate has been more zone 3 than it has been zone 2. So, I'm going to kind of calm my other runs down, and try to be more focused on zone 2 and building my aerobic capacity and getting that good base, that good foundation, for, the training ahead. As well as I've re-implemented strength training 2 times a week and 1 core workout. So working on my strength and musculoskeletal system to try to help make sure that I stay healthy and range of motion. I've inserted a fuller mobility routine twice a week. So working on everything, trying to, kind of take a step back and look at the big picture and make sure that I'm working on all those things to keep me healthy through this training cycle. Because I'm going to have some hard training and I'm going to have some hard miles. And, looking at that, I want to make sure my body's ready for it. I am going to train by time. There will be, obviously, the races will be in miles, obviously, but for the most part, I am going to train by time. Not worrying about how far I go. I may pick a certain course every now and again and just do a course, and whatever that is, that is. That's the great thing about kind of training myself. So that's the things to come and things to talk about. Right now, I'm kind of running about we'll say 35 to 45 minutes a day, just kind of regrowing after a month off, after finishing Wasatch. I did put my name in the lottery for Hard Rock. Next year, 2024, is the direction that I haven't gone. And so if I get in, I will do Hard Rock. I will do Hellbender and Hard Rock. And Hard Rock, I just want to get to completion, have both directions under my belt, and then I'm done with Hard Rock. If I don't get in, I don't get in. But, I'd like to kind of on the even number years, 24, 26, 28, put my name in the lottery until I get in, on the veterans list to run the opposite direction. So, that's a vast majority. Obviously, it's a lot of what's going on. Cross country will end this weekend. So this episode will come out on October 19th, my birthday. Be 46 this year. Pretty cool. But this weekend, October 21st, the kids will race their last meet at the NC Elite Middle School State Meet. So coming to a conclusion, which is a little bit of sadness. I'm going to miss the kids. Love working with them, but winter track starts November 2nd, so quick turnaround. So working on wrapping up the season with the kids at middle school, and also working on getting everything ready for the high school. My son's been training, getting in his base. I'm excited for him. So we'll see what winter track brings for everybody. So a lot of stuff going on here. Which has also meant that I have not finished the newsletter. My apologies, but it's been extremely busy dealing with all this stuff. With wrapping up the season, we've got obviously postseason parties and races and all this kind of stuff going on, as well as getting ready for indoor track with trying to build new uniforms, get those ready. Just a ton of things that scheduling purposes and everything. It's just been tough. So my apologies for not getting that out. I will. It's just, like I said, I don't want to rush and just put out a product that I'm not proud of. So I apologize. It's taking a little bit longer, but like I said, I want the finalized product to be something worthy of your time. So if you're interested in signing up the newsletter, if you haven't done so already, jump on over to my website, runningislife.run, and you can sign up there. The newsletter is free. And other than that, man, it's been great. Really enjoying things right now. I love the fall. I love running out there. Love the change of the season. It's love the cooler weather. It's just a great time of year. So I hope you're enjoying it as well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please reach out to me. All the ways to communicate with me, connect with me, they're all in the show notes, as well as connecting with Jason. That's in the show notes as well. So thank you again to Jason for coming on. Thank you to you guys for listening and being a part of this podcast. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends.